Hello, I'm Tim, and I like manga. I mean really like manga. I've spent the last half-decade of my life collecting and learning about Japanese comics and cartoons. So join me in my quest to discover even more stories that deserve a moment in the light. Who knows, you might even learn something yourself. In this episode, we take a look at Bastard, the infamous hiatus-prone manga that, believe it or not, might just be one of the greatest manga ever written, and directly takes stories from none other than the Holy Bible. Now, I know I've already made a pretty bold statement by saying Bastard is quite possibly one of the greatest manga ever written, but I don't say that without having valid evidence to argue that it quite possibly is. And one of the points I'm going to use to point this out is, you know how you read a manga, and you just can't put it down. It entirely engrosses you into the story, and you just have to read and read and read, either until completion or until you don't have any more to read. Series like Monster, Hunter x Hunter, or Fullmetal Alchemist are really good examples because those are manga that completely draw you in the same way Bastard follows in those footsteps. It's not fair to compare them directly to series like that because Monster is a thriller, suspense, and these are action series, so it's totally opposite. But the point is, the storytelling completely draws you in and makes you want to immerse yourself. It makes you want to sit for hours and hours on end. And I think Bastard does a really good job of doing this, especially later on in the series. So what is Bastard about? Well, to be exactly precise, Bastard, heavy metal, dark fantasy. There is a lot of heavy metal references and metal references, Halloween being one of them. But anyway, what happens if I said the story was about elves, dark elves, magic, medieval, fantasy, along the lines of what you would see in Berserk? But what if I told you it happens in the future? What happens if I told you it takes place on Earth, but years into the future? Further ahead than we are right now. Would that blow your mind? That we would kind of regress backwards to medieval times and living in those lifestyles. How would that become the future? How would we get to that right now? Bastard does a lot of things and incorporates a lot of things from mythologies, particularly from the Bible and books excluded from the Bible. Relies a lot on it, especially later in the story with like the Book of Enoch. Yeah, Bastard was explained in the Book of Enoch in probably greater detail and more thoroughly than what we're getting in Ancient Aliens. I watch these way too much, by the way. Bastard is a huge story, and it's going to be impossible to sum up in a short video like this. But let me summarize and then go into a bit more detail. It's a medieval fantasy story. It contains tons of fighting, magical spells, blasts everywhere, hellfire and brimstone, demons, possession of vampires. Satan himself shows up in the manga. Goes into lots of detail about the angels and the hierarchy of heaven and the angels in the Book of Enoch. So it's pretty badass. I haven't read that far into it personally. I haven't got to because I only have up to volume 16, then I have a gap to volume 19. But I have made it far enough to see the wicked transformation from Michael, the Archangel, into Michael, the Archangel's true form, which is a hot, dark-skinned female. Now, I can't go into too much detail about the story because it would spoil a lot of the things that happen later on. Because you read in the beginning of the story, and a lot is really vague, and you're not fed a lot, and a lot happens later on. Lots of stuff that will blow your mind. Stuff that was set up early on that you wasn't even expecting later on happens, and it just blows your mind. So what can you expect from this manga series? A badass story, tons of Western references, a bunch of references to the Bible and books taken from the Bible, a great cast of characters with ferociously awesome attacks. Decent amount of fan service, though at points it goes a long points without fan service and then bombards you with lots of fan service, so younger readers should definitely shy away from this series. The one fatal flaw with this series is the fact that it's been 4 years since the last volume came out. We've been waiting 4 years for volume 28. I hope he completes it before he dies, but there's still quite a bit of story left to cover, so it may be a series that never gets finished, unfortunately. But for the content that is out and that I've read, it's a phenomenal series. Whenever I started reading it, I couldn't put it down, and I've read hundreds and thousands of manga. So I'd like to think that I know a little bit about what would be good and what isn't. So if you're fortunate enough to get your hands on the English volumes, which are very hard to come by, and I still haven't been able to track down volumes 17 and 18 for a decent price. Or if you're in Japan or able to import from Japan, you're able to get the Japanese volumes for much cheaper. And then pray to the gods and the archangels, Michael and Lucifer and Hagiwara will eventually pick back up the series and hopefully give us an ending before I die. So I hope you enjoyed my pointless rambling on about a series that I really like a lot more than I probably should, and people will probably judge me for that. But it's my opinion, so deal with it. Later.